Britain's coast is under siege. December 27, 2025. Not from foreign naval forces, not from natural disasters, but from over 41,455 migrants who have crossed the English Channel in small boats this year, making 2025 the second highest annual figure on record. Just days ago, December 20th, 803 people arrived in the UK in 13 small boats, marking the highest single-day total recorded in December. About 2,163 people have now crossed in December.
I'm about to give you further proof that the thousands of strange men being allowed to break into England via the Channel should be classed as a national security threat. Tomorrow, one of Britain's most prolific people smugglers will be banged up at His Majesty's pleasure after becoming the first person in this country to be convicted of trafficking migrants across the Mediterranean. This guy here, take a good look at him, is 42-year-old Egyptian Ahmed Ebid. He came to the UK in October 2022 on a dinghy with his wife and 12-year-old daughter. The family immediately claimed asylum here, despite Ebid having lived in Italy and, at one stage, being jailed there for 6 years for attempting to smuggle a ton of cannabis into the country.
In December, traditionally one of the quietest months for Channel crossings due to cold weather, reduced daylight, poor visibility, and stormy conditions, the total for the year has now reached 41,455, up from 36,816 in 2024, and already making it the highest after the record of 45,755 in 2022. Border Force is redeploying maritime staff to processing centres, pulling vessels off patrol to handle the backlog. A Home Office spokesperson admitted, "The number of small boat crossings are shameful, and the British people deserve better." Shameful. That's the government's own assessment. Not challenging, not concerning. Shameful. Because after 7 years of promises, pledges, Rwanda schemes, French deals, new laws and counter-terrorism powers, the boats keep coming and the numbers keep rising. But real quick, before we expose why Britain's border is effectively non-existent, let's be honest. Mainstream media won't tell you that government measures to smash the gangs are not bearing fruit, that only 153 people have been returned under the historic France deal against 41,000 arrivals, or that arrivals are now happening in record numbers during the worst weather month of the year. That's why we built British Front Media. Subscribe now for unfiltered coverage of Britain's border collapse. Reason number 1, 2025 has become the second worst year on record for Channel crossings, with December seeing unprecedented arrivals despite weather conditions that should make crossings impossible. The UK recorded its busiest December day for irregular Channel crossings on Saturday the 20th of December, with 803 people arriving in 13 small boats. 803 people. The number of arrivals is the highest on record for the month of December in recent years. The group was reported to have been taken ashore at Dover by Border Force and the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, a UK-based charity that provides maritime search and rescue services. Think about that, Border Force and a charity, working together to bring illegal migrants safely to shore. The RNLI, founded to save British sailors, is now operating as a taxi service for people breaking the law to enter Britain. The increase in the number of arrivals is being attributed to the relatively calm seas over the weekend after days of bad weather. Days of bad weather. That's what it takes to stop the boats now. Not enforcement, not deterrence, not policy. Weather. And the moment conditions improve even slightly, hundreds arrive in a single day. In December, the highest number of arrivals in December was 3,254 in 2024. So while this December's total of 2,163 is lower than last year, the single-day record of 803 proves the capacity and willingness to cross has not diminished at all. The government celebrated when they experienced a 28-day pause with no crossings from November 14th to December 12th, marking the longest uninterrupted period since autumn 2018. Ministers hoped this signaled policy success, but as soon as more favourable weather returned, hundreds crossed immediately. The pause wasn't policy, it was weather. Nothing more. Reason number 2, the government's flagship returns agreement with France has proven to be an absolute farce, with only 153 people returned against over 41,000 arrivals. Under the one-in, one-out deal with France, which became law in August, for every small boat arrival the UK sends back to France, it will accept an equal number of failed asylum seekers. By November 27th, 153 people had been returned through this arrangement, and in return about 134 people brought legally from France to the UK. Let's do the math. 153 returns, 41,455 arrivals. That's a return rate of 0.37%, less than 0.4%. The government calls this a historic deal, historic failure, more like, and it gets worse. In exchange for those 153 returns, Britain accepted 134 people legally from France, so the net removal was 19 people. 19 out of 41,455. The controversial one-in, one-out policy with France came into effect on August 5th, allowing irregular migrants arriving in the UK to be sent back to France in exchange for others who will be allowed to enter Britain legally. The deal was announced with great fanfare. Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron celebrated. The media reported it as breakthrough cooperation. The reality? Negligible returns, continued high arrivals, and Britain actually accepting more people legally as part of the deal. This isn't border control, this is managed surrender with a press release attached. A Home Office spokesperson said, "We have removed almost 50,000 people who were here illegally, and our historic deal with the French means those who arrive on small boats are now being sent back." Almost 50,000 people removed sounds impressive, until you realise that's total removals minus including visa overstayers, failed asylum seekers from years ago, foreign criminals, not just small boat arrivals. The historic deal has returned 153 people out of 41,455 arrivals. It's statistical noise marketed as policy success. Reason number 3, government promises to smash the gangs, have achieved arrests but changed nothing operationally as criminal networks adapt faster than enforcement can respond. In January, the Home Office announced a package of measures to smash the gangs of people smugglers by dealing with them like terrorists, but so far that does not appear to be bearing fruit. Not appearing to bear fruit. That's polite British understatement for complete failure. The measures also included deploying National Crime Agency officers in Iraq's Kurdistan region, a center of the people smuggling industry, NCA officers in Kurdistan, sanctions on smugglers in multiple countries, new laws giving counter-terrorism powers to police. The Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Act became law, allowing authorities to deploy counter-terrorism-style powers to combat organized people smuggling gangs. All of this enforcement, all these powers, all this international cooperation. And what happened? The total for the year has now reached 41,455, up from 36,816 in 2024. Arrivals increased by over 4,600, a 12.6% rise year-on-year. December 19, 2025. Germany approved a law outlining prison sentences of up to 10 years for offenders involved in people smuggling to the UK. The criminal offences include the storage, transport or supply of small boats, engines and other equipment used for channel crossings. German authorities say the change closes a legal gap that previously allowed smuggling networks to operate logistics hubs inside the country with limited risk of prosecution. 10-year sentences in Germany. Counter-terrorism powers in the UK, NCA operations in Kurdistan, international sanctions, and 803 people still crossed in a single December day. Why? Because the smugglers don't care about laws in countries they don't live in. They operate from Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Albania, across multiple jurisdictions. Arrest one network, 3 more emerge, seize boats in one warehouse, they're manufactured in another country. It's an international criminal industry with unlimited demand and enormous profit margins. And Western governments are playing whack-a-mole, while the smugglers laugh all the way to the bank. Reason number 4, border force infrastructure is collapsing under operational strain with maritime staff being redeployed to processing centres as the system buckles. Border force is redeploying maritime staff to processing centres, pulling personnel off patrol boats to deal with the processing backlog. Think about what that means operationally. Fewer staff on patrol =, fewer interceptions =, more boats getting through undetected. Personnel reallocated to processing =, faster processing =, quicker release into accommodation =, more capacity for new arrivals. It's a self-reinforcing cycle of failure. Logistics operators should plan for possible delays to perishable freight on days when small boat arrivals need to be triaged. Britain's commercial freight operations are being disrupted because border infrastructure is overwhelmed managing illegal migration, delays to perishable goods, supply chain disruptions, border congestion. All because the system designed to process a few hundred arrivals per year is now handling over 41,000. Hotel use rose 13% between June and September and is costing taxpayers more than £3 billion a year. £3 billion annually, just on hotels. That doesn't include processing costs, legal aid, healthcare, education for children, or any other services. £3 billion for hotels alone, while only 153 people have been returned to France. Around 51,000 people arrived via illegal routes into the UK in the year ending September 2025, with small boat arrivals accounting for 46,089% of this total. 51,000 people through illegal routes, nearly all via small boats. The majority of those arriving by small boats claim asylum. Since 2018, 94% of small boat arrivals have applied for asylum. In the year ending September 2025, half of all asylum seekers, 55,000 people, had arrived through these illegal routes. Half of all asylum claims, from people who entered illegally, who broke the law, who paid criminal gangs thousands of pounds, and then 94% claim asylum upon arrival, knowing they'll be housed in hotels at taxpayer expense while their claims are processed over years because the system is completely overwhelmed. Reason number 5. New domestic measures to reduce incentives have been announced, but implementation remains unclear, and enforcement capacity is non-existent. The Home Secretary announced new measures to reduce the incentives for illegal migrants to come to the UK, including revoking the statutory legal duty to provide asylum seeker support, including housing and handouts for those that have a right to work and who can support themselves but choose not to, or those who break UK law. Sounds tough, until you realise this only affects people who have a right to work and can support themselves. Most asylum seekers don't have work rights immediately. Most can't support themselves. So the tough measure applies to almost nobody, and even for those it does apply to, enforcement requires identifying who has work rights, who can support themselves, and who's choosing not to, all while the asylum backlog sits at record levels and processing capacity is overwhelmed. The government has also taken domestic measures to tighten its border entry policies. New measures introduced include increasing and fast-tracking the deportation of irregular migrants through the streamlining of asylum cases that are likely to be rejected and limiting the appeal mechanisms. Fast-tracking deportations, streamlining rejections, limiting appeals. Where have we heard this before? Every government for the past 15 years has promised the same thing. And yet 22 saw the worst year on record for small boat crossings, with over 45,000 people arriving. 2025 is the second worst, and the trajectory is upward, not downward. The problem isn't lack of policies, it's lack of implementation. A Home Office spokesperson said, the Home Secretary has announced the most sweeping reforms to tackle illegal migration in decades, removing the incentives that bring illegal migrants to the UK and scaling up the return of those with no right to be here. The most sweeping reforms in decades, and yet 803 people crossed in one December day. If these are the most sweeping reforms in decades, and they're producing record December arrivals, what does that tell you about their effectiveness? Reason number 6. Political opposition highlights the fundamental failure while offering no realistic alternatives as Britain's sovereignty over its own borders erodes completely. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, said this year's increase was due to the absence of a deterrent after the government scrapped the plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. The Labour government scrapped the plan shortly after winning the July 2024 general election. Mr. Philp said the Conservatives would leave the European Convention on Human Rights, ban asylum and other protection claims for people arriving by small boats, and remove all people illegally in the UK within a week of arrival. Leave the ECHR, ban asylum claims from boat arrivals. Remove everyone within a week. Sounds tough, except the Conservatives had 14 years in power before 2024, and arrivals went from 297 in 2018 to 45,755 in 2022. They created the Rwanda scheme that was never implemented. They passed multiple immigration acts that changed nothing. They increased border force budgets while crossings increased. They're now promising to leave the ECHR and remove everyone within a week, while in opposition, having failed to do anything effective while in government. Steve Valdez-Simmons, Amnesty International UK's Refugee and Migrant Rights Programme Director, stated, "There is a dreadful irony in our Justice Secretary working with his counterparts to remove or reduce rights on the anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It shows how far we have drifted from the moral resolve of the last century, when our grandparents determined that the fact we are all born free and equal must be protected in law." So on one side, you have Conservatives promising to leave the ECHR and ban asylum claims, policies they never implemented when in power. On the other side, you have human rights groups saying any enforcement is a betrayal of universal human rights. And in the middle, you have British taxpayers spending £3 billion per year on hotels, border force staff collapsing under strain, and 41,455 arrivals with only 153 returns. Nobody is offering realistic solutions, because realistic solutions would require things the political establishment won't do: physical barriers, naval turnarounds, offshore processing in safe third countries, mandatory detention, swift processing within days, not years, immediate deportation of failed claimants, and withdrawal from international treaties that prevent effective border control. So here's where we stand in December 2025. 41,455 arrivals this year, 803 in a single December day. 2,163 in December total. Only 153 returned to France. £3 billion spent on hotels. Border force redeploying maritime staff to processing centres. 94% claiming asylum. 50% of all asylum seekers arriving illegally. Counter-terrorism powers. NCA in Kurdistan. German laws with 10-year sentences. French cooperation deal. New immigration acts. Sweeping reforms. None of it working, all of it theatre, because the fundamental equation hasn't changed. Arriving illegally leads to asylum claim, leads to hotel accommodation, leads to years of processing, leads to high grant rate. The journey costs £3,000, £5,000. Success rate is 68%. Even if caught, you're housed and fed while your claim is processed. Risk of removal is 0.37%. Why would anyone stop coming when the incentives are so favourable? The government calls it shameful. But they created the system. They maintain the system. They refuse to change the system in ways that would actually work. Because working solutions require political will. Britain's establishment doesn't have. Britain doesn't control who enters the country. Criminal gangs do. Britain doesn't decide who stays. International treaties and courts do. Britain doesn't have operational borders. It has a coast where boats land, passengers claim asylum, and taxpayers foot the bill for decades. Coast units don't warn arrivals are unstoppable because of gang sophistication or weather windows or French cooperation. They warn arrivals are unstoppable because the British government has made a political decision not to stop them. Every tool required for effective border control exists. Other countries use them. Britain won't, because the political cost of actually securing borders is deemed higher than the financial cost of open borders. So the boats will keep coming. December will keep setting records. Processing centres will keep filling. Hotels will keep billing. Border force will keep redeploying. And British sovereignty will keep eroding. Not through conquest, through surrender. One rubber dinghy at a time.